Hello everyone, the Instant Camera Guy here, and I wanted to show you a relatively quick video today. I'm not going to produce any longer content this week because I'm still doing stuff for my 2,000 subscriber special at the time that I'm recording this video. But I wanted to show you guys how to fix a relatively common problem in SX-70s and how to do so using nothing but off-the-shelf parts from your local hardware store. Now this is the door from an SX-70 Model 2, in particular the black version. This particular issue can happen to just about any door on an SX-70, but from my experience I tend to find that they're very, very common to fail on Model 2s for some reason. Now, I have no idea why that might be the case. It could just be that with the Model 2 came a lot of cost reductions and thus cheaper parts. But the issue that I'm referring to is the rivets. See, the SX-70 front door has this aluminium panel at the bottom, and that panel is where the film comes out. So, for example, when the camera ejects a piece of film, what happens is it gets fed through the rollers like so, until it comes all the way out, and that metal piece at the bottom is what is supposed to hold the sheet of film in place so that it doesn't drop and fly away. And I gotta say, if I had $1 for every single client that contacted me thinking that their camera was somehow broken because they contact me and they say, oh, I think my camera's damaged, the film's coming out like where the leather panel is, yeah, it's supposed to. Where else do you think it's going to come out? But I digress. That is how it's supposed to work. And this metal panel is held in place with 1, 2, 3, 4 rivets. Now, this piece here is clearly de-skinned. I've already removed the skin from this base panel. You must be very careful when you de-skin one of these, especially when you're working on the chrome and tan versions, because I've seen a lot of clients over the years attempt to de-skin a camera themselves, and they get confused between the foil that's under the genuine leather and the metal panel, and they start to try and rip this metal panel off. No, please do not do that. It is supposed to be there. It is, after all, what prevents the film from falling out. It's literally like that's how it's supposed to work. But the problem is that these rivets end up broken, right? So we can see this flap, the 2 rivets on the side have completely snapped. Okay, and as a result, this metal piece, although it's still held in place with 2 rivets on one side, is dangling on the other side. And that's something that I want to fix if I'm going to consider this camera fully refurbished. Now, I actually mention this because for those that have been recently following my Instagram posts and other content, you'll know that this month I've just been particularly cursed with utterly broken cameras from all sorts of sources, from those purchased on eBay claiming that they were refurbished, through to cameras purchased from big businesses, through to just lots and lots of stuff. I won't name names or anything like that. And several of them had busted rivets. One of which I found, and this takes the cake for me, they had replaced one of the rivets but not the middle one. Like, how lazy can you get, guys? But I'm going to show you how to disassemble the door. So while I was talking, I removed one of the screws already. Generally, you will need a square-headed screwdriver for this. So if you don't possess one, you will have to make one, which I would do by filing down a like a high tensile flathead bit. But yeah, once you've got the screws out, the rollers will come out, you can put those off to the side, and that gives you access to the doors. And we can see on this particular door that the rivets have just completely snapped in half, leaving the little heads at the bottom and the actual stake of the rivets through the plastic part of the door. And what I'm going to do is just use a pick to push them out, like so. Very carefully. There we go. And then that's going to get out, that's going to get out the little stake. And then I'll just quickly do that from the other side too. Sometimes these particular aspects of the rivet are a little harder to remove. Sometimes you might need to get under there with a little flathead screwdriver. Yeah, there we go. but usually they come out without much of an issue. So now we have 2 holes in which to insert 2 rivets. And that brings me to the big problem. These are very, very small rivets. I believe they are a 1/32 of an inch, so a strange imperial size. And that is just not a type of rivet that is used. It is very uncommon. It might be 1/16. Actually, no, yeah, I think it might, yeah. I believe this is like a 1/16 drill bit, a 1/16 sized hole. Truthfully, I can't remember because here in Australia we use the metric system and I'm not used to all these weird imperial sizes. But what I'm trying to get at here, it's a very small rivet. I think it's 1/16. Anyway, it's very small and it does not exist. If you go to your local hardware store, I very much doubt that you'll be able to pick up anything that is the correct size. Generally, what you will then need to do is go to a specific rivet manufacturer and get made some brass rivets exactly the size. And then you will need the corresponding like punch set or a set of special rivet pliers in order to crimp the rivets into place in order to hold the door flap on. Now the thing is, I'm just not a big fan of doing that. And so I modify the door so that it accepts different rivets in order to make my job easier. And why is that? Well, in case you haven't got the idea from the channel, I'm just not a fan of using very strange, highly bespoke, odd and hard to find parts. It's very annoying. It's annoying to have to keep weird items in stock. It's annoying for if they then break in the future and you have to go and replace more of that same weird specific part. I like to keep everything that I do very easy to organize, very easy to get stock, just because it makes life a little bit easier. And that's especially true where I am in Australia, where geographic isolation means that I can't necessarily get access to a lot of the stuff that might be easy to get hold of in the USA or in other countries. So I'm sure that some of you in the comment section will be going, "Oh, Jake, how ridiculous. You know, I've got a brass rivet making place just $2 down the road from me in Phoenix, Arizona, and they can hook me." Yeah, that's great if you do. I don't. So what I'm going to do is show you guys a way that we can modify this using standard pop rivets. Now, these are not 1/8 rivets. They're not 1/16 rivets. They are whatever size is in between those. Again, imperial measurements suck. It is so utterly confusing. I like the metric decimal based system because I don't have to start thinking of complex fractions every time I want to pick up a specific type of rivet. But these are whatever is smaller than a 1/8 rivet. What is it, 3/32 or something like that? I can't remember is what I'm trying to say. But they are very, very small. These are the smallest rivets that you can actually buy in a hardware store, and they are pop rivets. Now, for those that don't know what a pop rivet is, you use a pop rivet gun. You put the rivet in like so, and when you squeeze the handle, what happens is this long metallic shaft with a little ball on the end basically gets pulled into the rivet, deforming the rivet and basically enlarging the shaft of such rivet to the point where it grips onto the hole that it's in. And then eventually what happens is as that shaft gets pulled through, the little ball basically breaks away and gets trapped within the rivet, securing everything together. Or sometimes the ball doesn't, but it's already deformed the rivet to the point where it is stuck in place. Now, to use these rivets, like I said, all I did is I went down to the hardware store and I got just a multi-pack of rivets. I think it was about $10, and I've got heaps of them. Like I bought this bag years ago. That is how cheap these are. And that's one of the reasons that I like using my method. And the only thing that we need to do is we just need to modify the door slightly. We're going to drill out the holes ever so slightly larger so that we can use the larger diameter rivets. And the other thing that we need to do to modify it is just cut the rivets down to size, because as you can see, the actual shaft of this rivet is way too long, and it's going to result in extra material poking up through the door. So yeah, just before I continue, I want to emphasize that, again, the reason that I'm doing this is to make my life a lot easier. Yes, the true way to do it would be to use a brass rivet like Polaroid used back in the factory, but that has some disadvantages. First, you can't go to the store and buy them. They generally have to be made by a specialist rivet manufacturer. Second, you then need the specialist tools. You then need the set of crimping pliers made by said specialist rivet manufacturer. And I know of at least one technician who spent like the last 5 years tracking down all kinds of weird riveting pliers, literally scouring eBay for listings daily to try and find some, because they're not an easy tool to find. They're very, very, when people do sell them, they don't list them correctly, so they're very niche tools to find. Whereas doing it my way, you can go to the store, get a $20 pop rivet gun like I have here, get a bag of pop rivets for like $10 for enough to do hundreds of cameras. And because we're using rivets that are a thicker diameter, arguably they will be stronger than the originals. Because, as I said, this is actually a very common issue to see on doors, so the brass rivets are not particularly strong at the best of times. So why not modify them with something a little bit larger? So that is what I will do today. I will just grab a drill bit that is the right size. So I'm just going to put that to the side. And yeah, all you will really need to do is make sure that you have a drill bit that is the exact same size as the rivet. So that is the bit here. Does it say what size it is? It does not, but that's fine. All that I can remember is that they are smaller than 1/8. All right, so drill, door. What you want to do, make sure obviously you don't have any fingers underneath where the drill bit's going to come out of, but you just want to hold nice and tight. And just make the hole slightly larger. It should be very, very easy to do. Like it should literally happen in seconds. Then what I like to do is just get under there and blow out any crap that's there, because there's usually a lot of dust that gets in and under the door, so you might as well just clean that while it's there. Make sure the door can sit nice and flat. And this is where the secret sauce comes in. We are going to modify this rivet. So for this, I'm just going to use a tiny set of side cutters, and I'm going to use my favorite pair of big clips or pliers. And what I'm going to do is just, there we go, basically separate the actual metallic shaft that goes into the pop rivet gun from the rivet itself. I'm going to flip that rivet around, okay, so that the metal shaft is inside the rivet. And I'm pretty much just going to cut that directly in half, so that the rivet is maybe 3 millimeters long instead of like a whole centimeter long like it is here. And I'm just gonna take that over the bin there so metal parts don't go flying everywhere. And what I've now done, I have custom cut to size a very small rivet. Then all I need to do is put the shaft back through the rivet, like so. I'll put it in the pop rivet gun just to send the ball completely home. And I now have one custom sized pop rivet. So this is a very handy tip, by the way. If you ever need to use pop rivets, say even for a larger project, and you need really short ones that you cannot get to the right size, you can just cut down a standard one. It's that easy. So I'll just do that again. Again, what I like to do is just holding it in a pair of pliers, just smack the shaft on the bench so that it comes out. Again, I'm now going to feed it through like that. And the reason that I'm feeding the metal shaft back through is if you try and just cut the rivet on its own without the shaft in there, it'll deform and then you'll never get the shaft through again. So again, now I'm just going to put it back. Yep. There we go. All right. Now, the other thing I should mention at this stage is these rivets, you will never see them by the time the skin is put back on. So I wouldn't worry too much about going, oh, well, these ones are black and a little bit smaller and these ones are a little bit larger. It does not matter. By the time you put the leather back on, you're never going to see this. So the cool thing about a pop rivet gun is it does all the hard work for you. Ta-da! So no hammers, no dies, no punches needed. It does all the hard work for you. All you've got to do is simply squeeze a handle, like so. And that's it. One riveted together door. And then obviously you can put the rollers back on and in place. Now some early model rollers, as I said before, they actually have Torx head screws, but it's very uncommon to find them like that. Most will have square-headed screws. And yeah, you just want to make sure that none of the rivet is poking through on the inside too much. This one's looking pretty much fine. But if the rivet does poke through on the inside, what you can do is just using a flat file. Maybe I'll just show you guys this in case yours doesn't go completely flat. What I like to do, we'll just get the flap forwards. Just using a file on the inside. If any does poke through too much, just flatten it down a little bit. Using a hobby file set. Or a nail file or something like that that's strong enough. As I said, that one was actually clearing before, but I figured, just in case you cut it a little too long and it pokes up too much and the rollers don't want to go back on, you can modify it very, very easily. And so yeah, we've got two rivets in place now that are thicker than the original brass rivets. Should be stronger in theory. And then the last thing that we have to do, these rivets that I've got are pretty much the perfect size. They stick up maybe a fraction of a millimeter outside of where the original panel would go, because the original rivets sit deep inside a little recession, whereas my rivets are much more flush to the actual base of the camera. And again, I'm just going to get a rounded hobby file. Now you could also use a Dremel, something like that. But what I want to do, I'm just using very, very small movements here. Just to get the main top dome-shaped part of the rivet off. And by the time that's done, it's actually going to sit more flush than the original rivet would have done. So not only is it thicker, not only can we now purchase replacement rivets at the local hardware store and use a simple pop rivet gun to put them back in, but when the leather does go on, it's actually going to be a lot more flush because there's no recession. And so what you could also do is, just using a tiny little piece of sandpaper, just come over the head of the rivet, just to replace it like so. And again, I wouldn't worry about the cosmetics of the bottom of this panel. You will never see it by the time comes that you go to reskin that with new leather. It's not going to be an issue. But that is completely and utterly flat against that base piece of metal. It's sticking in place as it should. And yeah, completely repaired and doing its job. Now, like I said, if you wanted to, you could basically take half of this video that I've just shown you, but instead of using slightly larger pop rivets and having to drill out the holes, you can go and track down original style brass rivets like the factory would have used. Just be aware that if you do that, you're going to need some kind of either hammer and punch to mushroom the heads of the rivets into shape, or you'll need like a special set of rivet pliers, which you basically have to come over and squeeze the rivet again so it mushrooms the head over. I prefer to just use a pop rivet on account of how strong it is and the fact that I can just go to the local hardware store to pick up parts. It is a thicker sized rivet now, so ideally that would mean that the actual shaft is larger than the original, so hopefully it should be a little bit stronger. But yeah, by the time you put leather on that, that's going to work as it should, like from the factory. And it's an easy way to fix what is a very common issue. But yeah, that's really all I wanted to say. I will see you guys in the next video. 2,000 subscriber special is coming out pretty soon. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you there. Thanks for watching. Oh, just quickly before I end, this is a technique that you could use to fix this issue. This is another door that I have that I got off a donated camera, and someone has pulled down on that metal flap too hard at some stage. And now, I don't know if you guys can see, but that metal flap stays down. It doesn't sit flush with the bottom of the door like the one I just fixed does. So to fix that, what we could do is actually drill out all the original rivets from the base panel, pop that panel off, and then bend it back into shape so that when you hold it down, it sits flush. And then we can put 4 brand new rivets in place, thus making a brand new Model 3 door that I have here. So yeah, I just wanted to end on that too. The other thing that I wanted to mention, because I get asked this a lot, these little rusty colored marks on the roller, I don't know if they'll come out so well on the camera, but I'm often asked by people if that's going to affect their image quality, or you'll see people asking online. All that little marking is some oxidization on the steel roller below the rubberized layer, and it kind of shines through. If you put a thumb on that and just sort of feel for any lumps and bumps, if you don't feel any lumps and bumps, it's going to be completely fine. It won't affect your image. I've seen very crusty looking rollers that have had absolutely no effect on the image. It's just a discoloration that happens over time, and I wouldn't worry about it. But certainly if it's to the point where you can feel like an obvious divot in the roller and you're getting repeating marks in your images, then yes, it would be time to do something about it.